Good evening. It is July 31st, 2025, and if you've recently tried to buy, well, anything, a smartphone, a car, a surprisingly expensive avocado, you've likely noticed that the global economy is feeling a bit tense. It's like a family dinner where two uncles who haven't spoken in years are now in charge of carving the turkey. On one side of the table, we have the return of Donald Trump to the White House, bringing with him a familiar set of policies that can be best summarized as tariffs, but this time more so. His approach to international trade is less a gentle handshake and more a firm, slightly aggressive squeeze that leaves the other person wondering if their fingers are broken. On the other side of this increasingly crowded dinner table sits a group that has been quietly, and now not so quietly, bulking up: the BRICS nations. You probably remember them as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, a sort of supergroup of emerging economies. Well, they've expanded. Think of it like when a band adds a new guitarist, a keyboardist, and a guy who just plays the tambourine. Suddenly they're bigger, louder, and command a much larger stage. This expanded BRICS Plus bloc now represents a significant chunk of the world's population and economic output, and they are not exactly thrilled about the prospect of America once again dictating the terms of global trade with a Sharpie and a series of exclamation points. So what exactly is this BRICS thing? For years, it was an acronym cooked up by an economist that sounded more like a construction supply company than a geopolitical alliance. It stood for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Four massive, fast-growing economies that, it was predicted, would collectively dominate the global stage by the mid-21st century. South Africa joined in 2010, adding the S and making the acronym slightly less awkward to pronounce. For a long time, their annual summits were seen as little more than a photo opportunity. But then, something shifted. In 2024, the club decided to open its doors, inviting a host of new members, including major oil producers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE alongside Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran. This wasn't just adding a few more chairs to the table, it was a fundamental reinvention. The group, now often called BRICS Plus, suddenly represented nearly half the world's population and a significant portion of global GDP. More importantly, it now included a huge share of the world's energy production. Together, they represent a formidable economic force with a shared, albeit complicated, interest to reduce their dependence on the US dollar and Western-led financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Of course, it's not all sunshine and coordinated economic policy. This is a group of nations with vastly different political systems, economic models, and historical rivalries. And yet their shared desire for a more multipolar world, a world where Washington doesn't call all the shots, is a powerful glue that holds this unlikely coalition together, making them a force to be reckoned with. Now, let's turn to the other main character in our story, President Donald Trump. His first term was defined by a trade philosophy that could be charitably described as unconventional. Fast forward to 2025, and his approach has been supercharged. The centerpiece of his 2025 strategy is a proposal for a baseline tariff of 10% on all goods imported into the United States, regardless of where they come from. Think of it as a universal entrance fee to the American market. But that's just the appetizer. The most dramatic proposal is a potential tariff of 60% or more on all imports from China. This isn't just a trade barrier, it's a giant economic wall designed to fundamentally decouple the American and Chinese economies. So, how are the BRICS Plus nations reacting to the threat of a global tariff tsunami from the US? Well, they are not exactly sitting on their hands and waiting for the economic storm to hit. Instead, they are accelerating a strategy they've been developing for years, building their own parallel economic universe. The first and most visible part of this strategy is a pivot towards regional trade and cooperation. Instead of focusing on shipping goods across the Pacific to the United States, BRICS Plus countries are strengthening trade ties with each other. The second, and perhaps more ambitious part of the counteroffensive is the push for de-dollarization. The BRICS Plus nations are actively trying to change that, increasingly settling trades in their own local currencies. What makes the situation in 2025 so fundamentally different is the shift from a unipolar to a multipolar world. This multipolar dynamic changes everything. The BRICS Plus nations are coordinating their strategies. We are seeing two distinct global supply chain strategies emerge. Western companies are accelerating friendshoring, while BRICS Plus companies are doubling down on local-for-local supply chains. The result is the slow fracturing of the globalized economy into parallel, competing economic ecosystems. So, what does all this high-level geopolitical maneuvering mean for ordinary people? Unfortunately, when elephants fight, it's the grass that gets trampled. The most immediate and noticeable impact for consumers is rising prices. For businesses, the new trade landscape is a minefield of uncertainty. Companies now have to navigate a constantly shifting maze of tariffs, sanctions, and political risks. This has a chilling effect on investment. The impact on jobs is complex and double-edged. While some industries may see domestic employment increases, many other jobs could be lost as companies face skyrocketing costs. To truly understand what's happening, we need to look beyond the numbers and see the strategic goals driving both sides. For the Trump administration, tariffs are the primary weapon in a campaign to reassert American economic dominance. On the other side, the BRICS plus nations view their actions not as negotiation, but as a declaration of economic independence. Their strategic goal is to build a system where they are no longer vulnerable to American economic pressure. This fundamental difference in strategic objectives, America seeking leverage within the existing system, and BRICS plus seeking to build an alternative to it, is what makes this conflict so profound and difficult to resolve. This brings us to the central question. Are we witnessing the start of another destructive trade war, or is this something different? A painful but necessary reset of the global economic system. An argument can be made for both interpretations. The trade war perspective suggests these actions are purely destructive, while the reset perspective argues we're building a more resilient, equitable, and balanced global economy. The current chaos, then, is not the end of the story, but the messy process of building something new. The truth is, nobody knows for sure. As of today, July 31st, 2025, we are standing on the precipice of a new economic era. The familiar landscape of global trade is being redrawn before our very eyes. The clash between these two powerful and diametrically opposed visions for the future is the defining economic story of our time. The decisions made in the coming months and years will shape the world for generations. All we can do is watch, try to understand, and hold on tight. The ride is just beginning. Comment below with your take, and don't forget to subscribe for fact-based insights without the noise.